I'm very happy to welcome Hayden Lewis. Hayden is a Razmafzar team member from United States. I'm sure many of you have seen different videos by Hayden, but not an interview. That's why it's a special day. So we are going to see Hayden and in an interview with me. So welcome to Razmafzar TV, Hayden.
Thank you, sir.
Hayden, could you please tell us a bit about yourself, your background?
So, all right, the beginning, I was born in Würzburg, Germany. My dad was in the U.S. Army. So I moved around a lot. My dad was my first teacher for martial arts. He started with Taekwondo and Hapkido. And then he told me when I was older, like around 14, he said, you need to find other teachers because I can only teach you what I know. And if you want to learn other things or you want to get better than what I've taught you, you need to find other coaches. So started to get into wrestling and the list goes on. I've trained a lot. I fought twice. So, and now I'm getting into Razmafzar because I think it's very interesting.
Okay. What type of wrestling did you practice, Hayden?
So, when I was in high school, I did folk stuff similar to freestyle, but I would just like pick people up and dump them like in freestyle, which I think is stupid, but it's the rules. So I started with folk style, and then that kind of got me into MMA. And then one of my wrestling coaches in Bakersfield High School in California, he was a 2-time world champion in Greco-Roman wrestling. His name was Craig Shoney. He wrestled 2 times at the World Greco Championship in Tbilisi in the 70s, Tbilisi, Georgia, the country. Georgia's a state in the United States, but people think I'm talking about the state. I'm talking about the country.
Yeah,
He won it twice, and that guy was a monster. He was like 6'4", 6'4". I don't know the meters for that. It's probably almost 2 meters. Yeah. But he was 6'4", 250 pounds, so probably like 110 kilos, maybe more. And he was just a monster. Like he would grab you, and you can't break his grip. It's like the Hulk.
That's right.
And he taught me catch wrestling. So it was like if you get freestyle and combine it with any submission you could think of. That's what the original wrestling was. That's what President Roosevelt actually practiced. But when wrestling started in the United States as sport, you're not going to teach children how to break someone's neck and then have them do a tournament like that. So they made freestyle, Greco, and folk style. But the original wrestling comes from, at least the catch comes from England and obviously went to the United States because there's a lot of English influence here. And it had every submission, every takedown. But you can still get pinned, so you're not going to lay on your back. You're going to try to get off the ground, which I think is a smart way of fighting too for self-defense.
Yeah, of course, I fully agree with you. I mean, I fully agree. And nowadays in MMA, I mean, you fought MMA yourself in competitions. Nowadays, nature of MMA is changed. It no longer can you sit on the guard and hope for getting a submission. I remember the last MMA club I was training, they told me, a BJJ teacher told me, he was a black belt, and he said, look, those days are gone. People sit in your guard, they don't care, and they knock you out, right?
Yeah.
So those days are gone.
If I didn't have a knee injury and I was fighting, I would want you to pull guard on me because I won't even try to pass it. I'll beat your brains out. I won't even try to submit you. I'll just beat your brains out. And I'll sit there and post and just keep hitting you. So it's good for a sport, and it's good to know for self-defense. But I think for BJJ, and I think you agree with me on this, a lot of it is too sport-oriented but they try to advertise it as like this one-stop martial art. And I think it misguides people in a way.
Yes. Okay, just back to wrestling. Please explain to it. I mean, I know many, especially Iranian viewers, and also Asians, Georgians from, the country Georgia, and also Azerbaijanis, and many people in the region. I mean, in Asia, and also in Europe. we don't know folk style wrestling. So everyone knows freestyle and then Greco. What is folk style? Could you explain it to us?
So folk style, like I said before, is mainly like an American style. Sorry, my dog's right here. And so the rules are different. Like if I were to pick you up and I just drop you down, I would get disqualified because I'm not controlling it. So if I were to pick you up, I have to drop to a knee before I slam you on the ground. It's like in freestyle, you can just pick someone up and launch them.
Yes.
Which I think it's a better sport. But for folk style, you can't do that. And a lot of it technique wise, I mean, you have everyone in folk style because like I did judo for a long time. Like if you saw me wrestle, you'd be like, yeah, he's a judo guy. You can tell. So like they have different styles within it, but for the most part, it's mostly going for doubles, going for high crotches, going for single legs. It's not a lot of throws. Like freestyle to me is more 50-50 between throws, clinches, and going for the legs as well. So I think there's that difference there as well. Like if you watch Jordan Burroughs, he was always ankle picking, single legs, all that.
Yeah, he does.
So I think that's another difference besides not just the rules, is the techniques that you see more often. I mean, you see me wrestle, I'll be trying to probably throw 70% of the time, but I'm an outlier because most folk style wrestlers only do folk style.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, what you said about folk style wrestling is interesting because I did both wrestling, or I still do, of course, and also BJJ for years. So in BJJ is, in the beginning, I remember when I did BJJ, I didn't like sitting down, right? So normally what I did in the beginning, because I didn't know, so when they put guard on me, I picked them up and slammed them. And then I remember my instructor said, you cannot do that here, right? You cannot slam people. So, and then there I learned that in BJJ, also when you take part in competitions, you cannot do that, right? So this is very similar than the folk style, that slamming is forbidden, right?
Yes,
Okay.
of course. But like we talked about earlier, that was the most natural thing to do. Someone pulls guard on you, slam them on their head or on their back.
Yes.
So people don't realize that. Like you see, like we talked about before, it's like a cult. They're like, oh, BJJ, Gracie's unstoppable.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, and then let's go. So you did wrestling, of course. You did catch wrestling and Hapkido and Taekwondo from your father. Just before we go ahead, is your father still active in martial arts?
He still trains, but he was in the Army for 23 years. He was a combat job. They call them MOSs, but his job wasn't just like doing paperwork. He was a cavalry scout. So his neck and back are tore up, and he's kind of overweight. But he's not as active as he was. So I don't know if he's currently practicing right now because I don't live in Texas. That's where my dad is. But I'm pretty sure he does. Like last time I was with him, he was doing like kata and all that. He's super into karate.
Okay, very good. And tell us a bit about your MMA. You took part in MMA, and also we shared it on our channel, one of your fights. Tell us a bit about your experience in MMA and what you liked about MMA or you disliked about MMA and so on.
Okay, so I'll go with what I disliked about MMA first, so we can get that out of the way. My main thing with MMA is two things. Is a lot of the fighters, or I should say fighters, a lot of people get into it. There's some street kid that they don't have a good head on their shoulders. So whoever were their parents didn't raise them right, or I don't know what the issue is. They think they can just go in there and start swinging wildly and try to hurt people. And then some gyms don't do anything about that because they're getting money. And I seen a 18-year-old kid slam a 13-year-old kid on his head, and I'm like, hey, you need to tell that guy to stop or kick him out. And some gyms don't do anything about it because they get money. I can't blame him for that. So one thing is, a lot of the people, in my opinion, not a lot, but some of the people you run into are not good people and should never walk into a martial arts gym and learn how to fight. It's like training a monster. And then two that I don't like is like we said earlier, the BJJ cult. And then you'll see people like BJJ people like, oh, I'm a fighter. And I'm like, oh, you fight? And they're like, yeah, I do jiu-jitsu tournaments. I'm like, that's not fighting. Like, I'm not going to go and say I'm a fighter when I wrestled. No, I was a wrestler. I didn't fight. Fighting is everything.
Yes.
So that's another thing is that's the only two things I really don't like. Everything else is great. Like, you get in really good shape. Your confidence goes through the roof. Like, even today, even with my knee injury and I don't train MMA, I still feel like average Joe, I wouldn't have an issue with defending myself. Like, I would try to walk away and run away first. Or I can't run, but you know what I mean. But I feel like I would, even with the knee injury, with the skill set I have, I would easily be able to subdue him and hold him down without even having to punch him.
You know, what is very interesting what you said, you know, I remember, as you know, that my background, okay, I did many traditional martial arts, and let's stick just to one which I really love, is Kyokushin Karate. In Kyokushin Karate, it's very traditional, and I remember, for example, if people can watch it now, the first world championships, and so when Oyama was even alive, or later on, when you became world champion, first of all, because in the beginning, there was no weight class. You had a black belt, you had to be in kilos, more than 70 or 73 kilos, then you fought. And everyone against anyone, I mean, God, and bare knuckle, right? And you couldn't take anyone down, so you were always exposed to those strikes. But it was completely forbidden. We were disconnected. I was just saying, I'm sorry, I was just saying that in Kyokushin circles, no matter how you wanted to do that, you could fight. And then when you fought, their respect was the most important thing. And there was no weight class. There was black belt, and you had to be at least 70 or 73 kilos back then. And you fought. And every time you won, even if you won European Championship, World Championships, the only thing you did was, no, you are not allowed to jump and be happy or whatever and disrespect. I can really just agree and can say, really, I saw when I joined a MMA gym, the first problem I had coming from Kyokushin background and also coming from wrestling background, as in Persian wrestling, my father was a wrestler. In wrestling in Iran, you cannot just use cuss words. We say God muqaddas kushti, means the sacred place of wrestling. It's really like you go and pray that much, weight is given to wrestling, respect for this. And it reminds me, for example, just for wrestling, it's a very good example. A couple of years ago, when Iranian national team in freestyle, as you know, like United States has also very good wrestlers. United States, Iran, and Russia, they are the big power players in wrestling, both Greco-Roman and freestyle. I mean, in different categories, different weight classes, all three world powers in wrestling. I remember when Iranian freestyle wrestling team went to Greece to have some training and competitions. Greece today, I mean, with all respect for Greek people, they're good at other sports, I cannot judge. But of course, in wrestling, they're not like Iran, right? And then they were wrestling, and then Iranians were basically the national team of Greece. They had no chance. And then all of a sudden, you saw that Iranians were just getting points and pinning them like in seconds. Then you saw that the Iranian coach called them, talked to them. You could see only this. And they went back to compete. Then all of a sudden, you could see that the Greek people, wrestlers, were also scoring. And Iranians were also scoring. So it was a close match. Later on, when he went back to Iran, they asked him, what did you say? He said, they invited us to have friendly training and matches. And my guys were basically, in a couple of seconds, pinning them. This is not Javan Mardi, as we say, like Bushido, and this is disrespectful. And they need to let them also score on them. You see, and coming, Hayden, from this background, also Kyokushin is the same. Oyama said, if you do not have Bushido, Kyokushin makes you into an animal. And that's not what I want. Either you have Bushido and respect, or you just leave. I don't want any animal here. His caps, I remember that. And and then when I joined MMA gym, Hayden, I completely missed that. I tell you this, I trained in 2 MMA gyms for years. If I say, I know I don't want to be disrespectful to those, those guys who run the gym. I didn't like it. I could not get used to this atmosphere of disrespect. Everyone wants to, I'm better than you. I mean, hey, who cares you are better than me or the other one, right? And it was, Hayden, it was very bad. And to be honest, Hayden, so I would really like to know your opinion about that. Where does this attitude in MMA come from? I seriously don't understand that.
So the attitudes in MMA, my theory, being an MMA fan, like I watched the old UFCs in the early 90s when I was still living in Germany when I was 2-3 years old. I still remember watching Frank Shamrock, Ken Shamrock, Hoist Gracie, all of them fight when I was little, still in diapers. I still remember it. So I think it has to do with how – remember Jean-Claude Van Damme when he had the blood sport movies and everyone's like, testosterone. It kind of had that atmosphere back then, and that kind of atmosphere attracts a certain type of person.
Yeah.
I mean, good people too, because we're humans. We've always been attracted to violence in some way or another, whether watching, studying martial arts, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the early UFCs and other MMA promotions kind of set the foundation, and then the fighters competing in it would give off this attitude for entertainment, and then people feed off that. Like now, our generation now, good example is Conor McGregor. Then all of a sudden, Conor McGregor starts running his mouth, and everyone's super into MMA now. Everyone's Irish all of a sudden. Everyone starts talking disrespectfully to each other, and this even happens in the MMA gyms where these guys are nobodies. Like, you never heard of them. They still fought, but now they're Irish, they're disrespectful, and they're a Conor McGregor fan. So that's I think it starts from the early UFCs, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And seeing that people don't understand when someone's being an entertainer. They think they're being. Some people are like, okay, I'm gonna be like that.
Yeah.
And it sells tickets, unfortunately. It sells tickets. You see someone be like, oh, I want to watch him get beat up because he's being disrespectful. I'm guilty of it because I'm like, I can't wait till this guy gets shut up. So it's part of the entertainment and then people feeding off of it.
I mean, one thing which we cut off and then the recording was not running, and I wanted to say is also and I don't say it. I say it as a wrestler and a Kyokushin guy, karateka, which are like in realistic, if you want to say realistic martial arts, if some people call it. I mean, I don't classify martial arts. If you ask me, train martial arts, I train every martial art. Learn from any that's my philosophy. But let's say what people say about realistic martial arts, wrestling and Kyokushin belong to them. And coming from these, which are very highly competitive and it's hard, but I need to say, and also do BJJ, have been doing BJJ for a long time. But that one thing, I always say, Hayden, and you agree with me, that the nature of the fight always changes if you know how to fight and add an element. If you eye jab, if you bite. And I think I don't know if it was recorded, so I'm going to say it again. I said to my black belt BJJ instructor back then, he was teaching me how to do triangle choke, right? And I said, yeah, if he turns and bite, he said he cannot bite, he can hold it. And I said, no, if a strong man bites, right? And then, I know many police officers in your country, Hayden, and they all told me one of the biggest fears they have, not forget the shooting and so, when they get someone, if he's crazy, excuse me, I use this word, and starts to bite, because, it is so strong. And I told my, this BJJ guy, this black belt Brazilian, big name, I don't want to mention his name. Do you know if someone is angry and strong and starts biting you, you know what kind of force he can create? Do you think you can hold your leg in a triangle choke? Hey, you as MMA fighter know you fought. You can't do that, right? So, you see that we need to know as much as it's important what we train. And then we don't need even to go into a weapon fight. You know, imagine, Hayden, one has a khanjar or a dagger, and you want to go for a single double leg takedown?
No, I'm gonna run away.
Exactly. you see,
This
this
isn't the
time.
movies.
Exactly. You know, you can't do that. So if there is a weapon involved, even if there is like a pen involved, and the guy is not afraid of using a pen like this and, you know, punch and stab, the nature of the fight changes. And I think very often when it comes to self-defense, in my humble opinion, it's important to teach and to learn all these realistic things. But even when a pen changes the nature of the fight, when a strong bite changes the nature of the fight, when eye jabbing changes the nature of the fight, we need to understand, even if you're an MMA fighter, if you're doing a tough sport, but again, hey, let's face it, right? And I think that's one thing which sometimes in MMA gyms is not taught, right? To some people, as you rightly mentioned that, you know, as you rightly mentioned that, this is not a good thing. And to be honest with you, if some people say it's because of sport, if it's because of sport that MMA changed into that, maybe you can add to it. I disagree. Because if you go to, okay, wrestling in Iran is like Budo, forget that. But in the United States, you know, at the university, I wrestled when I went to your country to university, and wrestling there, it's not a Budo, as you say it, right? But lots of respect in American wrestling scene. Or even if you go to boxing, go to a boxing gym in the United States, you don't see this attitude in boxing, right? And I always ask myself, so you see, it's not sport oriented. So this is something which we need, in my opinion, our colleagues who run MMA gyms or the whole MMA organization really needs to work on that. We need to go back to respect and all this name calling and all what you said about everyone is Irish now. Everyone uses bad words or cuss words. Absolutely. Yeah. Hayden, I am in different videos. You said you love archery and it's your preferred method. Why?
Well, just like we said earlier, if someone has a hanjar, I don't want to get close to him. Like, if I have a gun, I'm going to use a gun, you know? I'm not going to be like, oh, okay, sing, and then try to duel him, you know? So, to me, archery, one, it helps me focus. I just stare at the spot of the target that I want to strike with my arrow. And two, it's aesthetic. You see someone with a bow and your eyes light up because us as humans, there's a theory that we've been doing archery for 70,000 years. So it's literally in our DNA. Like you give a bow to a kid, like a little kid, and they'll start pulling it back. It's like they already know. So I think that has something to do with it. But as my preferred method, if I was a soldier or warrior back then, it's because I can possibly stop my threat without having to be right in front of them. That's why.
Okay. As you know, we have in Sassanid period, Parthian and also Sassanid period, we had this special draw. I'm sure you've seen that. And then later on, it changes to thumb draw. So we in Razmafzar practice both. And then the way we hold the bow, we have Changale baz, right? We have this way, then we have this way, and a different grasping of the bow combined with that. Which is your preferred method? Have you tried different methods?
I don't know all the terms of the archery yet, but I grab the bow like this, and then I put my thumb down and I point with my finger.
Okay.
But I learned that from, you might know him, his name is Justin Ma. He does Ming archery. I saw him do that, and then I started doing it. I was like, okay, I kind of like that, and it feels good because it's like a judo grip when I grab the gi. Yeah. I do that with my bow. So I'm like, okay, it feels like I'm grabbing someone's lapel. And then I like the Sasani draw and the thumb draw. I like the thumb draw more because I feel like I'm a little more accurate with my groupings. And I feel like I get a better release. But I do like the Sasani too. However, I do not like Western style archery because I can't hit anything. The arrow goes way off every time, so I don't even try to do like people talk about English style, Mediterranean style, Hungarian style. I'm like, I don't even try that. To me, it's like too inefficient for me as well, because you got to make sure your arrows are like almost perfectly tuned to your bow.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, if you do Eastern style, you do the bow torque, and your arrow doesn't really touch your bow. You can literally get a weak arrow, a strong arrow, and shoot it pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree with you. I mean, okay, I understand, you know, like Japanese or all Asian, Korean, Persian, and so the style of shooting resemble Mongolian, Turkish, and so, but when it comes to European, it's so different. I mean, I never tried, I tried it once, and I need to say, I realize it doesn't fit me at all. I cannot explain it, but exactly as you said, it's something which it doesn't fit me actually.
Can't do it.